Very often go up to, I live in the north, and I will go up for a Tibetan sound bath. Oh, they're very, very good. I like sound healing. I like the crystal bowls and the Tibetan bowls, so I go for that quite regularly. And yeah, Tibetan bowls are metal, and the crystal bowls are large crystal bowls, and the practitioner will use a drum, a gong, to roll round, and you get this resonating sound that you actually feel the vibration of the sound rather than you hear it. And then we'll use other things as well, like rain sticks and different things. So whilst you're lying there in shavasana, in the corpse pose, deep in meditation, this sound is washing over you, and it heals you as you lie there, and you float out. It's wonderful. So I love that. I'm a sucker for massage. I like an aromatherapy massage, hot stone massage. I like that as well. Some of the best treatments I can't have very often, but whenever we go to India, I always go for an Ayurvedic treatment. They're fantastic, and yeah. So those are some of my favourites. But I'm open to try everything. I did breathwork session with somebody I trusted very much, Gaia Paulini. She's an amazing breath worker, really powerful stuff, and I loved it. And this is interesting, I would like to do more. I haven't found someone yet near where I am that I want to do it with. So that's what I'm saying. You have to know who you trust, who you feel comfortable with, and it's not a reflection of any of the practitioners near me. It's just I haven't found that person who makes me feel comfortable doing it yet. And with something like breathwork, you have to really trust the person that you're doing it with, because you go quite deep inside. So yes, so that's a good example of knowing that you want something, knowing that you like it, and I absolutely believe that the universe will provide when the time is right, and that the right practitioner will come along. Mindfulness on a weekly basis and meditation. I'm a great one for my cards, so I'll quite often do my cards for around things that are troubling me, and I've got angel cards at the moment that I'm particularly keen on, Centaurian Virtue Angel cards. I'm a great one for mindful walking, and that is my favourite practice at the moment. I do yoga every week as well, but mindful walking is really, because I live in the middle of fields and wonderful countryside, so to go off and it's not very mindful at the moment because we have a 13-week-old puppy, so I tend to be being dragged through a hedge most of the time, and that kind of interferes with being in the being in the right state for it. But that's another one that I tend to build into my weekly practice. I've got a close friend. He's my son's godfather. I've sent him on to various therapists, and he's always come back and said, well, not really for me. And I sent him on a retreat, and he's come back and he's discovered Brandon Bay's The Journey. I would never have thought of him doing that, knowing him as I do. Absolutely sold on it. It's done wonderful work for him, and you just don't know until you try, really, what's going to work. If you don't have somebody who's got personal recommendations to give you, if you're not moving in that field and you're not exposed to other practitioners and people who try these things, then the obvious thing that most of these therapies, the existing therapies, the more traditional therapies, have governing bodies. They have associations, and they will recommend practitioners in your neighbourhood that you can try. But these new modalities that are coming through, they're not governed. But that's when you turn to a book or a magazine like this, and that will help you to discover. Because when you read it, either you think, nope, I'll flick on, it doesn't work for me, or you get that tingle, and your intuition says, this is the right thing for me, this is something for me to try, and I should go along and try this. In my experience, the universe provides the right therapy at the right time for the individual. So And it is only through trying things and making it. The great thing at the moment about all of these new therapies and the new vibration, and the fact that everybody is becoming more interested, is that it becomes part of people's lives now. It's when I first started writing about these topics, that was separate from your other life. Your other life was your conventional life, and you dabbled in this, or you immersed yourself in your spiritual life, but you weren't part of the real world. Now it's not like that anymore. People are much more open about their spiritual beliefs, about the fact that they're prepared to experiment, and that they're prepared to try different things to find what helps them, what increases their well-being, what increases their spiritual path, journey that they're on. My family have got very used to these things. I remember, bearing in mind we live in the middle of Lancashire, my sons were quite surprised to come home from school one day earlier than I'd expected, to find mother in the front room with a shaman shaking rattles and blowing smoke over her. They walked in, said hello and reversed out very quickly. And my husband's not surprised when I've had, a very well-known animal communicator to dinner, and she spent more time talking to our dog than she did to him. But that was absolutely fine. That's part of being in this world. It's very important for me that we make this information accessible to everybody. It's not something that you have, I think sometimes there's been a snobbery in the past about having the knowledge and keeping it to yourself. I think it's important that we share our knowledge and we share what we know and we make it available to everyone. And hopefully people through the book will get to try different things. The book is separated into areas so that you might have an inkling that you're drawn more to a healing, a postural work. You want body work. You're not in your head. You want to work with the body. So there's a section on those. It might be the breath that draws you. It might be the breath that attracts you. So there's breathing techniques. We talk about the classic disciplines that are, of course, still evolving. The multidisciplinary systems, such as your Ayurveda and your traditional Chinese medicine, all those things. One of the things that I've seen a huge increase in interest in has been energy medicine and vibrational healing. And I have to say, I very nearly did train after going to a Donna Eden event and weekend. That worked well with me. But again, what I think my job is spreading the word. And hopefully this book, Healing Therapies Bible, will help to do that. So, therapies that have appeared recently. I think what I find interesting is things in particular that are established that are having offshoots, if you like. So, Reiki, most people are familiar with. Then we got a new level of Reiki with the angelic Reiki. We had a wonderful article from a woman who was a most amazing healer, and she does holy fire Reiki. So those are the things that I find are particularly interesting. There's a modality called Zimbate. Again, it's an energy healing modality, and Carolyn Snyder is an American. She's the founder of it, and when she came over some years back, and I interviewed her up in Reghead, that was so powerful that I had to sit and eat scones all afternoon just to ground myself again before I could do the 3-hour drive back. That's fascinating stuff. But that's I think what's quite hard for an editor of a magazine such as this, Klaus will probably agree, is that there's so much stuff out there now. So much of it is of value. But some of it it's hard to decide what you include and what you don't, because if you haven't tried it, and there's such a lot of it, and it's just one person with something new. This could be something very powerful, it could be something of value. But then again, it might be just one person who's misguided and thinks that they have something very special, and it's not. So as an editor, it's quite hard sometimes to know what you give publicity to, what you share the word about, and what you don't. And in my experience, you can't try absolutely everything. So I have learned over the years that I have to use my intuition. I have to not only use my spiritual side to trust my intuition, but I have to use my professional judgment as an editor and a journalist over what might be authentic and what's not. But in the main, the vast majority of stuff is of value, and I think you do sense when you interview people, when you talk to them, or when they approach you, whether they are coming from the right place, whether they are helping people, or whether perhaps they're not ready for being in the wider world. So you're looking for something for self-development?
Yeah, for example.
Yeah. So if you're looking for self-development and you want to do it not because you want to teach it, or not for your well-being, but just because it's something you're interested in, I think the same rules very much apply. But if you're actually going on training courses so that you can self-heal and self-help, you also have to keep grounded on this. So you follow your intuition, in terms of the general area that you want to go in, and then you research the sorts of body work, for example, that are out there, and a couple of them will leap out at you. If you don't know anyone who's tried Hella work or Alexander technique or Rolfing or whatever it is that you suddenly feel drawn to, then it's worth going onto those websites of the practitioners. Go to the governing body first, see what recommendations they make. You will find a name that again leaps out at you, or there might be a few, and then go onto their websites and see what works for you, and also look at the testimonials. Again, it is using, you have to use intuition, but be sensible with it and take all the precautions that you should in terms of finding what works for you practically. You can try stuff on your own, of course, and a lot of people prefer to go down the route of reading up on these things, and once they feel that they're knowledgeable, then practicing it. But there's an awful lot of books out there so that you can self-help, and that is an authentic, that's an absolutely valid way to do things. I again would recommend, in the main, that you are better to at least consult a practitioner and have a sample first, to get a taste for how things work, get a taste for whether this is for you, and see how they work. And everybody, you can all do the same course, but you will all practice slightly differently. I can go for a dozen sessions with a dozen different practitioners in one field, and they will all be different. But that's because you make it your own, you make the practice your own, and you follow the principles of it. But it's your unique energy that works with the individuals. But with self-help, you can learn a lot from a book, and if you don't have the wherewithal, you don't have the funds to regularly attend something, then you can do it. But my recommendation would be that you do take some training, or you at least sample those therapies with a trained professional, a trained practitioner first. I'm just going to give you a little brief background about myself to start with, and how I got around to ultimately writing this book. I'm a journalist first and foremost, and I started my career in magazines. I've worked on all sorts of magazines, from Bicycle magazine through to Girl About Town, and in the early mid-80s I got involved with Health and Fitness magazine, and I edited that for many years. And at that particular time, that's when complementary therapies was just starting to take up an interest here, and we had people getting involved with complementary therapies, which perhaps had been considered fringe before. And in my capacity as editor on Health and Fitness, I got involved with writing quite a lot about all the new, they were called alternative therapies then, you weren't considered complementary, they were called alternative therapies, because nobody did allopathic medicine and complementary medicine at the same time. So I got involved with covering those topics because that's something I was very interested in myself, and got to go and sample all sorts of different things, from shiatsu, Indian head massage, through to flotation tanks and stuff which was considered quite unusual and out there at the time in the early 80s. Not considered so unusual now, thankfully. And I think perhaps one of the reasons I was very open to all this was because I grew up with a psychic mother. So it wasn't strange for my mum to see a biplane and talk about stuff like this when I was growing up, or my uncle coming to visit and telling us stuff. None of that seemed very odd to me, whereas I told my friends and they were slightly freaked out by it. I think I also have 5 planets in Scorpio, which is why I've got this sort of love of the esoteric, probably. And it's partly why I was very keen to discover what was out there and what there is to try, and all the different therapies that you can get in touch with. I used to sit in a healing circle in my early 20s, and so I think I was always exposed to different types of healing, different types of esoteric practice from quite a young age, and none of it seemed very odd to me. When my sons were born, I could no longer continue editing magazines because it's very full on as a staffer, so I decided to go freelance. And as most journalists know, it helps if you have some sort of specialism as a freelance, and the obvious thing was alternative health for me to write on. So I'd write for women's magazines and the Nationals on complementary therapies. And all of this, I also wrote on travel, because that was something I was keen to do, some books on parenting, again, green parenting. So all these things tied together. At that stage, I started to contribute to Kindred Spirit magazine, which you've seen copies of here. So I've been working over 20 years with Kindred Spirit, on and off. Well, no, nearly 20 years, I suppose. And I've been editing it full-time for the last 4 years. Kindred Spirit has been around over 25 years. It's the go-to magazine in the UK for all things esoteric. It started at the time of the harmonic convergence in 1987, which was probably the last time before 2012 when there was a big sea change and people got very involved. So Kindred Spirit reports on all sorts of spiritual diversity. We interview the leading lights of the MBS world, but we also cover evolving modalities and therapies and new treatments. And so over the years, in researching the stuff for Kindred Spirit, I've got a great wealth of experience in terms of what's out there, and this has always been something that I felt should be shared with others, because when you talk with people who are involved in the MBS world, they may well know about quite a lot of the therapies that are out there, but if you're new to it, or if you're just coming in, where do you start? How do you find what it is that's going to work well for you? So since 2012, it's been an exciting time for all of us in the MBS world. There's been a new paradigm, a rise in consciousness, and obviously everything was hinged on 2012 being the end of the world. Clearly it wasn't the end of the world, but it was the end of a specific time period, and there was a new vibration and a higher vibration now, and that has meant that people's work has changed. A lot of the stuff that we have in this new paradigm has meant that there are new people, far more people, wanting to know about the esoteric, wanting to know what's out there, wanting to know about the different sorts of therapies. There are people trying to make it more accessible for those who are perhaps less informed. So there's all sorts of therapies that are coming along that are aimed at a new market. So things have evolved, like John Parkin's fuck it therapy, for example. This is something that's going to invite young people in. It's not aimed at those who have been on their path for a long time, but it's aimed at people who ostensibly have everything in their lives. They have good jobs, they have a high income, and they're still not satisfied, and what is it that's lacking? And teachers like John, teachers like Kyle Gray, who's an angel therapist, but he's young, he's hip, he's got a sleeve of tattoos. These people are appealing to a slightly different audience. So there's lots of new people coming into the world, but again, what's out there to tell them? There's magazines like Kindred Spirit and Watkins MBS, but to pull it all together, that's one of the reasons we did the Healing Therapies. Along with attracting a new audience, we've got new modalities evolving. We've got new therapies that are coming every day. There's a section in Kindred Spirit which is the therapy reviews, and I can tell you that I constantly get letters coming in, emails coming in saying, I've started a new modality, I've had something come through to me that will help people, that people can benefit from. And so getting that out there, letting other people know what's there, is part of Kindred Spirit's brief, but also something that the book does. It introduces some of these new therapies that have not been around for very long to a much broader audience. Existing modalities that have been around for a long time, some of these are evolving, they're changing. I remember going to Pippa Merivale's Metatronic Healing. I think it was her first workshop she did in the early 90s. And now, if you go to a workshop, it's almost unrecognisable. I know we've got two healers and practitioners in the audience. Hazel Sinanen, spiritual healer, energy healer, all sorts of other things, from golden DNA activation, quantum healing, theta healing, and more. And Vicky Warner, medical herbalist, hypnotherapist, Reiki master. How would you say things have changed for you in your practices? Have evolved since 2012? Has things, in what way? Sped up?
A lot of people seem to be processing a lot more at a lot faster rate. So they're coming in and it seems to be a lot more intense for people. Even myself as well, I'm clearing through, you seem to be going through a lot more issues. And women themselves as well, personally, are stepping right into their power now. More so I've noticed, which is really good, really good for the women.
People are experiencing everywhere, and all sorts of different types of people who perhaps in the past might not have had that instinct or impulse to go off and try something new. So one of the things about the Healing Therapist Bible, again, is how do you know what to try? How do you know what's going to work for you? I think the first thing I should say before we go into how you choose is that you don't have to be ill to get involved with the healing therapies. It's not just for those who are having some sort of acute crisis. If you want general well-being, if you want preventative health measures, then getting involved with healing therapies is a great step forward. And having said that, a lot of therapists, in my experience, they find their calling because they've had some sort of crisis, they've had some sort of acute illness, and they find help, they find relief through a particular therapy, and they are so inspired by it that that's what they then train in and go on and teach. But if you're just interested in finding things for your general well-being, how do you choose? How do you know what's right for you? And in that sense, I would encourage you to try different things, but your intuition will tell you. You will know what works for you and what resonates with you. I've come very close on many occasions because I've tried so many different things, met so many wonderful teachers and wonderful healers, and sometimes you meet someone or you have a treatment and you think, I would love to do this. This is something